Welcome to my video about the exchange variation. As a French player, probably the one variation that is the hardest to deal with is the exchange variation, mainly because it's just so boring. The positions are often symmetrical. You know, there's not much excitement. It's sort of like for Sicilian players when they see the C3 Sicilian, they often, it's pretty dry. So I have played a system now for a while that makes the position purposely asymmetrical. This is a game I played against an expert at a tournament in North Carolina. He's rated somewhere in the 2000s, and he played the exchange variation, and then played bishop d3. And bishop d3, knight f3, it doesn't make much difference. I'm just going to cover this game as an example, because with this system there's not much to memorize. You always do pretty much the same thing, and it really leads to some very interesting play, unlike when you just play symmetrically. So I play bishop d6, and the idea, I want to always develop the bishop first before the knight, and you're going to see why. Knight f3, and the idea of this system is to go knight e7. And the point here is that I don't want the knight on f6. I want to be able to play f6 in case there's a bishop g4 problem. But the main point behind the move is to play bishop f5 and trade off my not-so-good bishop for white's best bishop. And it's just a simple strategical idea, and it's very easy. There's no need to memorize anything. In the game, and I have had a tremendous score with this system. I don't know if I think I've won every game I've played in this variation. I've played at least 4 times, and I can't think of one time that I had any problems. So in this game, white castle, black castle, and once you see this position, I don't need to go through a lot of lines because we're doing the same thing. Knight c3, this is where I thought this move was somewhat, it's not clear where the knight needs to go, but it's certainly not clear the knight belongs on c3 because it's blocking the c pawn, and usually white likes to play c4 at some point. So it seems like, and after I play c6, the knight really is kind of gumming up the works, really. I mean, what is he? He's not really attacking anything. So I thought that was not the best move. He played rook e1, and I played bishop f5. This is the strategy of the whole system, that we're playing bishop f5, and we want to trade off this bishop. And once the bishop's traded off, we're left with a beautiful bishop on d6. So I definitely think if you play the French and you encounter the exchange variation, this is definitely the way to go. And here my opponent thought for a while. I think he was considering this little, trying to get a trick in and maybe win something. Of course, it now looks like I can't take the rook, or he would take the bishop and have 2 pieces for a rook and probably be better there. But I had bishop takes d3, and here if he just moves the rook somewhere, I'm going to move the bishop back, and I'll have the 2 bishops, and they're going to be I have an advantage there, no doubt about it. And I saw that if he tries to win some material with rook takes b7, I have bishop a6. So, and if he takes the knight, I'd be up the exchange. So I didn't think that would be good at all for him. I think it would be bad. So he played here bishop g5, and this is the point of the whole other virtue behind knight e7. White usually wants to play this in the exchange French, but now we just play f6. And the point here is we're going to have good control for the whole game over the e4 square. But white is not going to have good control over the e5 square because of our pawn on f6. So really here, I think black's completely equal, and I'd rather play black here any day of the week because it's very easy. I have such good control over that square, and it's going to take white a lot of time to figure out what he's up, what he's going to do. Here I play queen d7, and it's just I'm developing the queen. Knight e2. I didn't like this move. I mean, I guess he needed to play it because he wanted to play c4 eventually, and since the knight was on c3, that was impossible. And I also think the idea was he wants to play bishop g3, trade off my good bishop, so that, you know, we both are left with just knights. But even in that case, since I have such good control over e4, even if there's no bishops on the board, I still think I have an easier game because of just that simple reason. He doesn't have control over e5. It's going to be hard for him to get his knights to active squares. So I played knight a6. I needed to get developed and get everything out of the way. Of course, bishop takes a6, I would be very happy to see. I'd just take with the pawn. I would have the open b file for the rook and the two bishops that are very beautiful. There's no reason why I would have an advantage there, no doubt about it. And this is the thing, I mean, white, he clearly was unfamiliar with this position because he was down at this point probably 25 minutes on the clock, or maybe even 30 minutes. I was at least 30 minutes ahead, because, you know, it's not clear what is white going to do. I mean, he's now, at least he's got some ideas to play c4 and get something going against the center, but even then it doesn't seem like he's got much. So black's totally equal here, I think. I mean, there's not a lot white can do, and it's because of these weird moves like knight e2, and it's not clear to me bishop g4 was even any good. So he played bishop g3. At least he was consistent. The only downside here, and I had been cultivating this idea the whole game, I took on d3. Okay, he can't do an intermediate move like bishop takes d6 because I would take on c2 and win a pawn. So here he took with the queen. Okay, that's this much I expected, and I played knight f5. And the goal with this move is I want to take back on d6 with the knight to further strengthen my control over e4 and c4. And really, it's not like he can just ignore that, because if he just plays some random move, I'll just take the bishop with the knight, and then I'll just have a great bishop versus two kind of weirdly placed knights. So I wasn't, I mean, I've more or less forced him to take here. Knight takes, and now you see the great control that I have over this e4 square. I mean, the knight's covering it, the d5 pawn's covering it, and I have rook e8 coming. And, you know, I have a clear plan. White does not have a clear plan. He's sort of just been trying to work something up. And of course, better to play with a bad plan than no plan at all. And here an expert is playing moves that they're not bad moves, but he's not getting anything. He's not getting anywhere. You know, it's these knights are... That knight on f3, totally dominated by the pawn on f6. The knight on e2, where is he going? He can go to f4, but even then, what? At least it's better placed than on e2, I suppose. But if he goes to f4, I have knight e5. Knight e4, I'm sorry, and my knight's way more dominant than his are, even though I have a bad knight on a6. So there's a lot to consider here. He played knight g3. I still think maybe f4 was a little more intimidating. At least the knight looks a little more active, because on g3 it's just kind of, it's not a bad move. I mean, I haven't gone over this game with the computer, by the way, so I'm sure I might have missed a few things along the way, but I just wanted to give you a feel for this variation and how it can work. So I opposed the rook on e1, and he played that. I don't even know what that move was supposed to do. I mean, he's clearly wanting to play c4, but it wasn't clear to me even after he played c4 what he was getting, because he's going to be left with these hanging pawns that are not going to be so easy to hold. And actually, those hanging pawns, this c4 move, I think, is what lost him the game. I played knight c7, trying to get the knight somewhere reasonable, which was my whole problem. You know, where is this knight going to go? So, and it almost, I don't know if it ever found a very good square until maybe the very end. c4, at least he's consistent, making a plan, and he's playing for the center. I took, and I played queen f7. And usually with positions with the hanging pawns, if you can get one of them to move forward, the square in front of the base pawn becomes extremely weak, and then all your focus and energy should be for playing for the base pawn. And here, you know, he has almost no choice but to play c5. And I played queen queen c4, and just playing to trade the queens. And then I would start piling down on the d4 pawn. So he didn't do that. I don't know what better thing he had going. I mean, it's not like, I don't see why he needed to keep the queens on. It's not like he had some attack that was like building, although he did eventually get one. Knight f7, the knight was attacked, and he played knight f5. At least now he's playing some active moves, getting the, you know, playing for some initiative, playing for some kind of you know, something. I played the knight to d5. I think this move was slightly inaccurate because he had this move knight e3, and it was gonna bother me. I mean, I didn't see anything better than takes, and maybe he could even take with the f pawn and try to with some central play. I don't know. I felt like I had made an inaccuracy here, but he didn't play that. He actually played rook takes c8. I took with the rook and played rook e1. I took queen takes and played king f8 because of the back rank problems. So here, you know, I'm attacking the pawn on a2. I didn't really want to, I don't have time to take it. Let's put it that way. At least at the time I didn't want to risk it. At this point we were both pretty low on time. And I played this move. I was very proud of, queen c2, because he's threatening queen e3, and this way I had like almost a guaranteed perpetual, or I could trade queens from what I was seeing. So I spent most of my time on this move. The time that I was ahead, I spent 20 minutes from this position to find queen c2, because I knew that I had queen c1 check and then eventually queen f4 check, and then I could come back to c7 if needed. So I'd make this cute triangle with the queen going from here to here and here, making this perfect geometric shape. But you know, he played queen e3 anyway, and we had probably 5 or 10 minutes on the clock each, and I made a mistake here, which he could have probably won a pawn at least, by playing this move knight d8. And he, of course, he had almost no time either, and when you're in time pressure you have to kind of be a little easier on yourself when you make a mistake, because, you know, you can't calculate everything when you have 4 minutes on the clock. So he played queen d7, and this move looks perfectly sensible. Like, he's attacking my knight, threatening, you know, some really nasty business. The move that would have probably been much better is queen d6 check, and I don't have anything better than maybe king e8. He can take the pawn with the knight, and it's going to get, you know, it's going to be bad. I don't know. I don't think I'm just like losing, but I'm very close. I'm hanging by a thread in that situation, by a very small thread. So he played queen d7, which, you know, wasn't a losing move, but the position now, he had no chances to win at all, which he didn't have any chances anyway. Before knight d8, knight d8 was just a small mistake. This is where that figure came in, that triangle, check, check. He played g3, and now I brought the queen back and ended all those threats. He played queen d6, I took king d7, knight f5, and hit the knight, brought it back. And now you see why these hanging pawns are going to be so weak, because eventually I just sacrificed the knight, but it wasn't even a sacrifice because this knight fell. I was a pawn up, and my opponent resigned just a few moves later. Because when in knight in games, if you're a pawn up, it's pretty much the end of the game. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It was not a perfect game at all, but it was just a good illustration of how you can spice up the exchange French, even in by making the position asymmetrical and playing for some very simple strategic plans. And that's the key. We always want to play with a plan and have an idea of what we're going for. We don't memorize opening lines, not understanding what our goals are. That's the wrong way to play. We do not memorize traps and little tricks. That's the wrong way to play. We want to know what we're doing and have a real understanding of the game and how we're going to play. So I hope you really enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.